So this is another writer that I struggle with reviewing, or I have struggled in the past with. Another writer I've brought up to you guys is David Sedaris. He's one of my favorites, and when writing is done at such a high level, sometimes I feel like, damn, I don't even have the right to talk about it. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but I feel that way. And today I'm talking about the book David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell, as I'm sure you got from the title. And this is one of those books that has the possibility to change your life. Some books change your perspective so much that you can't really leave them the same. And I think Malcolm Gladwell has 3 or 4 books like that, including Tipping Point, What the Dog Saw, David and Goliath, and there's one more that I love that I might put on the screen after this when I can remember it. Blink. That's what it is. Blink. But he has these books that when you finish reading it, you're like, okay, life isn't what I thought it was all the way. There's a new perspective. There's a different perspective. There's always a silver lining. There's always something positive to be pulled from every single situation in our life. Malcolm Gladwell hammers this point in almost every single book, and he certainly does in David and Goliath. So let's get started. So I listened to David and Goliath actually back in March 8th, 2019. I finished it. So it's been 5 years since I originally read it or listened to it. And then I re-listened to it about 2 to 3 months ago during my runs over the course of probably a couple weeks. While I ran, I put it in my headphones, especially because it was cold, so it was easy to have the over-the-ear headphones. And I just listened to it, and I felt compelled to come back and talk to you guys about it. When somebody asked me what first book they should read, or if somebody were to ask me that, or if I try to introduce somebody to reading, I introduce them to Malcolm Gladwell. He has books that you can't necessarily put down, you can't necessarily push pause on, because the information, the stories, the anecdotes, they're all seemingly perfect. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Some of them are just like, bro, it's so clear, it's so obvious, it's so well written and well composed. How could it be this good? That's how Malcolm Gladwell feels. So let's get into some of my biggest takeaways from the book. My first biggest takeaway is things are never what they seem. So Malcolm Gladwell gives points in David and Goliath that really expand on the fact that things that we think in society are negatives, many times are actually positives. And the main key evidence of this is the story of David and Goliath. Just as a short overview for anybody, I feel like most people are probably pretty familiar with it, but this is an old biblical story. Goliath is this giant, and he's huge. Like, literally, when we think of Goliath these days, we think of it as being like something huge. Like, a Goliath might actually be an adjective for something huge. I haven't looked that up in Merriam-Webster, but I think it might be. And so with that being said, David was supposed to lose this fight. Goliath was supposed to be this huge giant that had a sword, that had a shield, that had never really lost a battle. And David was supposed to be this kid, this dumb, cocky kid who thought he could beat a giant. But when you break down the story historically, David was going to win pretty much 10 out of 10 times. So David was armed with the slingshot. Goliath was armed with a sword and shield, a slingshot, long-range weapon, as fast as some slow guns even, like some lower caliber guns. And so, if you have accuracy with that, there's actually no way that somebody should be able to beat you with a sword. It was found that I think it's called Marfan syndrome, for somebody who has like super elongated limbs, like almost like Abraham Lincoln, I think, had this. And it makes you gangly, and it makes you awkward, and also affects your sight. So Goliath couldn't actually see well. So not only did he have all this armor, he had a heavy ass sword, he couldn't see well, he was gangly, and David had no armor on and a bunch of rocks that he could just sling at his head. So when you put it that way, of course he was supposed to win. But there's so many things in life like that, guys. So many things that the general consensus even is that it's a negative thing, but in reality it's a positive thing. And this book goes through example after example after example of that. Examples in Nazi Germany, examples in disorders, examples in how we've discovered new things in medicine, examples in like cancer research. There's examples in basketball. There's a limitless amount of examples because we all have some silver lining to our flaws. or our perceived flaws. My second takeaway, directly linked with the David and Goliath story, is challenge your perspective of stories. And whether that be biblical stories, whether that be sayings that our parents give us, whether that be kind of general accepted cliches and arcs of different stories, challenge how you look at it. Maybe the way you've been looking at it isn't the way that's most productive to your mindset. And if you could just shift it just 5 to 10 degrees, you may be able to expand your mind to a level to where it's a positive. In reading this book, if you really just look at the numbers, if you look at other people's stories that have gone through what you go through, if you look at the amount of effort you're personally putting in, if you look at the amount of support you have around you, many times you have many, many more advantages than you think you do. It just takes identifying them. And so if you look at your own personal story, if you look at other people's stories, and you just shift that perspective, and you see, oh, okay, that's how they got through that. There's a lot that can come from that. Next is that there's always a silver lining. Always. Unless you're dead. And even that, there's a silver lining for somebody else probably. Which is a very dark sort of joke. But you probably helped somebody else. Like, just saying, in their grand scheme of how their life goes. So every single action has a reaction within your life, with somebody else's life. It's about us creating that perspective, learning that perspective, and being patient enough post-trauma, post-issue, to be able to seek that perspective. Sometimes you give up right after the adversity, and there's no time to sort through the bullshit to get to the positive perspective. If you're able to just wait, think about it, learn from somebody else, and apply those lessons to your own life, a lot of times there's many silver linings to negative things that happen in our life. And the last is all the stories. I went through the table of contents just because it's always impossible to remember all the different chapters of a book. But every story he gave, the people were brave. Every single time. To defy odds, to be groundbreaking, to be different, to even think differently and challenge these preconceived notions in our brains, it takes bravery. And way more bravery than people are going to give you credit for, or you may even give yourself credit for. But always remember that in order to change the mind, to change the body, to change the actions and the people around us even, it's going to take bravery. So let's get into who it's for. First, who it's for, if you're familiar with Malcolm Gladwell books, for changing or challenging your perspective. I think everybody should be open and trying to actively challenge their perspective. You cannot think right about everything or have all the perspectives of everything. You have to keep learning. You have to keep learning new perspectives. You have to keep learning other people's perspectives. You have to keep learning the opposition's perspective, even if you'll never agree with it. And so Malcolm Gladwell is great practice and reading something and inputting and intaking information that might be counter to what you believe, but really statistically backed up as true, to where it's not even really debatable with some of the stuff that he talks about. And some of the stuff that might be debatable, it's still good to intake it and be like, all right, somebody else thinks like this. I know I think like this, but there are people out there who don't think like I do. Thank God. Next, it's people who want to challenge limiting beliefs. A lot of us, there's a sign over here in Chicago that said unlearn hate. Maybe it says like unlearn horrible things you learned in your childhood. It's pretty much what the gist of the sign is. I don't remember what it says verbatim. It takes some unlearning on it. Like, our parents weren't perfect. Our grandparents weren't perfect. Our politicians, what's been on TV or what we intake on YouTube, none of these aspects of life are perfect. Therefore, we have some messed up perspectives. All of us. We have something that needs to be worked on. And if you think you don't, you probably have the most problems of all of us. Lastly, it's people who want to be great. It's going to take bravery. It's going to take going against the grain. It's going to take being empathetic and understanding other people's perspectives to be great in this world. For all of us, for the most part. Especially for people who are my color. It's going to take changing our minds, to change the minds around us, to influence the people around us. And to do that, we have to almost be impeccable in certain aspects in our life. And not necessarily financially, not necessarily in status, but morally. morally, to be great, you really need to be, no, to be great morally, you really need to be as close to impeccable or trying to be as possible. And in order to do that, you need to learn other people's perspectives to understand even what your own perspective is. So at the end of each video, I like to let you guys know what I'm walking away with. What I'm walking away with David and Goliath is that we all have a superpower. And our superpower could literally be, my superpower can literally be what I thought as a child was negative. You guys, I thought I was talking, you guys don't know how much I got in trouble for talking as a kid. And I couldn't stop. It wasn't like I was disrespectful. I can't stop talking. There's a reason why across my videos, across my channels, there have been hundreds of videos. Because if you put a camera in front of me, I could talk for days on end, damn near, if you kept giving me food, weed, and water. And so that was a flaw that I saw as a kid. When I was a kid, I had really bad knees. To give you guys one more example, since I was 10, my knees have been in horrible shape from just the way I walk. If anybody knows me, you know I walk like I played 20 years in the NBA because I've had knee problems since I was 10. So almost the past 20 years. And what that has done for me now in adulthood has forced me to get them so much stronger and so much more steady and run so much more than other people have to, that it's kept me in very good shape. If I thought my legs were perfect, I would be probably sitting on a couch. But I literally can't to keep them up. That is a silver lining to me because I need to be moving mentally. And so my inability to move as a kid with my legs in adulthood has forced me to move and has allowed my brain to be able to keep up with all the things I need to be creating, keep up with all the things I need to be thinking about, keep up with all the people in my life, because I never live in one place. I'm constantly juggling all these things, and I need to run to do all these things. And who knows if I would run and keep up with my legs the same way I do today if I didn't have those knee problems as a kid. So guys, find your superpower. I'm not saying running is my superpower, but talking probably is. In some sort of way. And it was something that was seen as negative, and it was something that really damn near hurt me as a kid. But as I've grown, I've learned, let me lean into it a little bit more. Because of books like this that allow me to shift that perspective and not stay in that negative route in my head of what random adults are telling me as a kid who are already upset with their lives. Guys, David Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell is a must-read to me. Many of his books are. You will see me reviewing others. I really enjoyed talking about this one. I'm probably going to re-listen to it. These were the books that got me introduced to reading. And so for any of you guys, lastly, for who it's for, who are trying to get into reading and are really looking for the books that are going to keep you interested, keep you hooked, a few of these Malcolm Gladwell books will do you right. I'll see you guys next time on GP's Library.